Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be replacing brake lines on a 2006 Toyota Tacoma using LinesToGo part number BLT-128-SS. While this particular installation is being performed on a 2006 Tacoma, this set of lines will also fit the following year, make, and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Make sure to depressurize the fuel system before starting the installation. Tools required: 10mm, 12mm, 14mm, and 21mm sockets and ratchet, 8mm, 10mm, and 13mm wrenches, pliers and cutting pliers, drain pan, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be medium. To depressurize the fuel system, locate the fuel pump fuse using your owner's manual and remove it. Start the vehicle and wait for the engine to stall. Make sure to replace the fuse once completed. Start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal using a 10mm wrench. Raise and support the vehicle and remove all four wheels using a 21mm socket. Inside of both front wheel wells, remove the rubber splash guards by removing the plastic push clips that secure them. Inside of the right front wheel well, use a 10mm wrench to remove the threaded fittings from the bottom of the frame-mounted union and the top of the right front flex hose. Remove the lower section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the top of the frame-mounted union. If the fittings are seized to the line, you can cut the line near the fitting using a pair of cutting pliers and remove the fitting after using a socket or wrench. Use a 10mm socket to loosen the clamp that secures the intake air tube. Disconnect the mass airflow electrical connector. Open the clips that secure the air filter lid and remove it from the vehicle along with the filter. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the 6 threaded fittings from the ABS module. Remove the top section of the right front brake line from the vehicle. Inside of the left front wheel well, use a 10mm wrench to remove the threaded fittings from the bottom of the frame-mounted union and the top of the left front flex hose. Remove the lower section of the left front brake line from the vehicle. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the top of the frame-mounted union. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut the left front brake line beside the brake booster. Remove the next section of the left front brake line from the vehicle. At the passenger side of the firewall, remove the wiring harness from the metal bracket by lifting the plastic clip. Remove the final section of the left front brake line from the vehicle. Next, use a pair of cutting pliers to cut both rear brake lines near the heater core connections at the firewall. Remove the 2 upper sections of the rear brake lines from the vehicle. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the 2 threaded fittings from the master cylinder. Remove the primary and secondary brake lines from the vehicle. Next, underneath the vehicle, use a 10mm wrench to remove the 2 inboard facing fittings at the frame-mounted union. Remove the plastic fuel line bracket from the metal tab underneath the master cylinder. Remove the 2 rear brake lines from the plastic clips inside of the left front wheel well. Pull the brake lines down, rotating them around the fuel lines. Behind the left front wheel, pull down to disconnect the fuel line bracket from the body. This will allow you to pull the fuel lines away from the frame so you can route the brake lines in and out of position. Remove the remaining forward sections of the rear brake lines from the vehicle. Next, we will need to remove the fuel tank. Start by removing the plastic cover from the fuel line connections at the front of the tank. Disconnect the 2 quick connect fittings by depressing the plastic tabs. Have a drain pan ready as some fuel will be left in the lines. Inside of the left rear wheel well, use a 12mm socket to remove the bracket that secures the fuel filler neck. This bolt is missing here but will be replaced during the installation. Next, use a 10mm socket to remove the other bolt on the bracket that secures the clamp to the largest tube. Remove the 2 other lines from the plastic clip and remove the bracket from the vehicle. Loosen the clamp on the large tube using a flat blade screwdriver or an 8mm socket. Remove the quick connect fitting from the smallest line by depressing the 2 tabs to disconnect it. Next, place a support underneath the fuel tank and use a 14mm socket to remove the 2 bolts that secure the fuel tank straps. Underneath the vehicle on the other side of the tank, remove the spring clips and pins that secure the fuel tank straps and remove the straps from the vehicle. Carefully start to lower the fuel tank. There is still a hose connection at the rear of the tank and an electrical connector at the sending unit. You will need to lower the tank a few inches to gain access to them. Once you have enough room to reach on top of the fuel tank, lift up on the plastic cover over the sending unit. The cover just snaps into place. Disconnect the sending unit electrical connector. At the rear of the tank, disconnect the vent tube by depressing the 2 tabs. Continue to lower the fuel tank and remove it from underneath the vehicle. Remove the 2 remaining threaded fittings from the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Use a 10mm wrench to remove the 2 threaded fittings from the top of the rear flex hoses. Remove the rear brake lines from the plastic clips along the frame. You will also need to remove the fuel vent line from the clips so that the brake lines can be routed around it. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut the 2 rear brake lines at the center. Remove the 4 remaining sections of the rear brake lines from the vehicle. Next, use a 10mm wrench to remove the 2 threaded fittings at the bottom of the rear flex hoses. Use a 12mm socket to remove the bolts that secure the brake lines at the axle and remove the metal clips from the lines. Remove the threaded fitting from the left rear wheel cylinder using a 10mm wrench. Remove the left rear axle line from the vehicle. Remove the threaded fitting from the right rear wheel cylinder using a 10mm wrench. Remove the right rear axle line from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new LinesToGo stainless steel brake lines, start by installing the right rear axle line labeled 06E into position. Start one fitting into the bottom of the right rear flex hose and the other fitting into the right rear wheel cylinder. Replace the clips that secure the lines and secure them using a 12mm socket. Tighten both threaded fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the left rear axle line labeled 05E into position. Start one fitting into the bottom of the left rear flex hose and the other fitting into the left rear wheel cylinder. Replace the clip that secures the left rear axle line and secure it using a 12mm socket. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the left rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05C into position. Start the front threaded fitting into the bottom rearward facing port in the frame mounted union. Secure the line into the plastic clips along the frame. Install the next section of the left rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05D into position. Start the rear threaded fitting into the top of the left rear flex hose. Connect the two sections of the left rear brake line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Tighten the union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Tighten the fittings in the rear flex hose and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the right rear line labeled 06C into position. Start the front threaded fitting into the top rearward facing port in the frame-mounted union. Next, install the right rear brake line labeled 06D into position. Start the rear threaded fitting into the top of the right rear flex hose. Connect the two sections of the right rear brake line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Tighten the union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Tighten the fittings in the rear flex hose and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Next, at the front of the vehicle, install the secondary LinesToGo brake line labeled 02 into position. Start one fitting into the front horizontal port in the ABS module by hand. Start the other fitting into the front port in the master cylinder by hand. Secure the line into the plastic clips along the firewall. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the primary LinesToGo brake line labeled 01 into position. Start one fitting into the rear horizontal port in the ABS module by hand. Start the other fitting into the rear port in the master cylinder. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the first section of the left front LinesToGo brake line labeled 03A into position. Start one fitting into the top rearmost port in the ABS module by hand. Install the next section of the left front brake line labeled 03B into position. Connect the two sections of line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Start the other fitting into the top of the left front frame-mounted union. Tighten the LinesToGo union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Tighten the fittings in the ABS module and the frame-mounted union using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the final section of the left front brake line labeled 03C into position. Start one fitting into the bottom of the frame-mounted union and the other fitting into the top of the left front flex hose. Tighten both fittings using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the frontmost section of the left rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05A into position. Start one fitting into the top front central port in the ABS module by hand. Next, install the frontmost section of the right rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 06A into position. Start one fitting into the top frontmost port in the ABS module by hand. Secure the lines into the plastic clips along the firewall. Next, underneath the vehicle, install the final section of the left rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 05B into position. Start the rear fitting into the bottom inboard facing port in the frame-mounted union. Connect the two sections of the left rear brake line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Tighten the union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Tighten the fittings in the frame-mounted union and the ABS module using a 10mm wrench. Next, install the final section of the right rear LinesToGo brake line labeled 06B into position. Start the rear fitting into the top inboard facing port in the frame-mounted union. Connect the two sections of the right rear brake line using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Tighten the union using a 10mm and a 13mm wrench. Tighten the fittings in the frame-mounted union and the ABS module using a 10mm wrench. Secure the fuel vapor line back into the plastic clips along the frame. Bleed all four wheels using an 8mm and a 10mm wrench, making sure to keep the master cylinder reservoir topped up with fluid. Secure the plastic fuel line clips at the front of the vehicle back into position. Secure the wiring harness at the metal support on the passenger side of the firewall. Place the fuel tank underneath the vehicle and start to raise it into position, leaving enough room to connect the wiring harness and the vapor tube at the rear of the tank. Connect the electrical connector at the sending unit and replace the plastic cover. The cover just snaps into place. Connect the vapor tube at the rear of the fuel tank. Continue to raise the tank into position while routing the fuel filler tube over the frame. Replace the two fuel tank straps by replacing the pins and securing them with the spring clips. Secure the fuel tank straps using a 14mm socket and then remove the support from underneath the tank. Tighten the clamp on the fuel filler tube using an 8mm socket or a flat blade screwdriver. Connect the small line at the quick connect fitting. Next, replace the bracket and secure it into place using a 12mm socket. Install the locking bracket and secure it using a 10mm socket. Connect the two fuel line quick connect fittings at the front of the fuel tank and replace the plastic cover. Replace the plastic splash guards inside of both front inner wheel wells using the plastic push clips. Replace all four wheels and tighten to your manufacturer's recommended torque specification using a 21mm socket. Replace the air filter along with the air filter housing lid. Secure the lid with the metal clips. Secure the clamp on the intake air tube using a 10mm socket. Reconnect the mass airflow electrical connector. Connect the negative battery terminal and secure it using a 10mm wrench. This concludes the installation of stainless steel brake lines on a 2006 Toyota Tacoma using LinesToGo part number BLT-128-SS. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992. Email us at info@linestogo.com or check out our website link below. Don't forget to take advantage of our free next day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you in our next video.